We are still in the theme of recognizing the ordinary for God's extraordinary use. Today let's conclude this three-part message by examining the deeper meaning behind the staff turning into a snake and why God instructed Moses to pick it up by the tail. This extraordinary moment was more than a demonstration of God's power. In fact, it was a lesson of faith, authority, and trust. So, see how we can overcome fear by trusting in God. In Exodus chapter 4, the Lord says to Moses, "Throw your staff on the ground." Moses threw it on the ground, and it became a snake, and he ran away from it. Then the Lord says to him, "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail." Then Moses reached out and took hold of the snake, and he turned it back into a staff in his own hand. So, what can we learn from this? Number one, the staff becoming a serpent speaks of revealing power over fear. When Moses' staff turned into a serpent, it was no coincidence. In ancient Egypt, serpents symbolized both power and danger. Pharaoh himself wore the image of a cobra on his crown, signifying his supposed authority and divinity. By turning the staff into a serpent, God was directly confronting the symbol of Egypt's power and showing that he alone had the ultimate authority over them. Therefore, the serpents remind us that God is sovereign over every fear and every symbol of earthly power. When faced with intimidating circumstances or challenges, we can trust that God is greater than anything that appears to threaten us. In fact, Isaiah 41 tells us, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God, and I will strengthen you and help you, and I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Number two, picking it up by the tail speaks of an act of faith. God's instruction to pick up the serpent by the tail was significant. For Moses, this command defied logic and even common sense. A serpent is most dangerous when approached from the tail, as it leaves his head free to bite. By commanding Moses to take hold of the serpent in this way, God was teaching him to overcome his own fear and to trust his protections. This act of obedience also demonstrates Moses' submission to God's authority. He was being prepared to act in faith and being courageous even in the face of Pharaoh's might. Sometimes God asks us to do certain things which seems unreasonable or even risky. He calls us to trust Him, even when the situation seems dangerous or even uncertain. Picking up the serpent by the tail represents surrounding our fear and stepping forward in obedience, knowing that God will protect us and guide us. Proverbs 3 and 5 tell us to trust in the Lord with all our heart and not to lean on our own understanding. Number 3, the staff restored speaks of God's authority in our hand. Now, once Moses picked up the serpent, it returned to being a staff. This was no longer just a shepherd's tool. It became the symbol of God's power entrusted to Moses, through which this staff, Moses would perform signs and wonders before Pharaoh and leading Israel to freedom. The restoration of the staff reminds us that when we place our fear, abilities, and resources in God's hand, He transforms them for His purposes. What once seems ordinary became an extraordinary instrument of His divine power. God entrusts us with His authority to carry out His will, just as He did with Moses. In fact, Jesus tells us in Luke chapter 10, "I have given you authority to trample on snakes and scorpions, and to overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing will harm you. So, what are the lessons for us today? Well, we must conquer fear. We must obey God's command, and we must carry God's authority. Therefore, let's never forget that the story of the staff and the serpent is a powerful reminder that God has authority over all things. And when we confront our fear and trust Him, He equips us to do extraordinary things for His kingdom. So, will you take hold of what He has placed before you and trust Him for the outcome? God bless you.